I would like to begin by thanking you for inviting me to participate in your annual conference. I would also like to personally thank Inclusiv's President and CEO, Cathie Mahon, for her leadership and contributions to my committee's efforts to support community development financial institutions and minority depository institutions. This includes testifying at one of our field hearings held by Representative Meeks in New York last year, and serving on the Community Development Finance Advisory Board that Senator Warner and I formed to build on our success last December in securing an unprecedented $12 billion in capital investments and grants to support CDFIs and MDIs. So thank you for allowing me to say a few words about the importance of investing much needed capital in communities of color across this country. I would also like to thank Inclusiv's membership of community development credit unions for your hard work in the past year. We all know that Black and Latinx communities were among the hardest hit during this pandemic. Your diverse network of mission-driven institutions has been instrumental in ensuring that critical aid reaches consumers and small businesses, especially those in vulnerable communities and those in dire need during the pandemic. Your work did not go unnoticed. I want you to know that I'm very familiar with the key roles CDFIs play in providing a capital and investment lifeline to communities of color. Over 40 years ago, I worked with CDFIs in my home state of California and was the founding director of the CDFI Pacific Coast Regional Corporation. The lessons I learned back then are critical today. Since the onset of the pandemic, my committee worked tirelessly to ensure that CDFIs and MDIs received critical dollars to support small businesses and minority-owned businesses. We saw discrimination in the Paycheck Protection Program, where many of the biggest banks neglected small and often minority-owned businesses for their wealthier clients. In the second PPP round, I secured a $60 billion set-aside for community lenders, including credit unions, CDFIs, and MDIs, to provide PPP loans. As part of the December 2020 pandemic response package, we authorized a historic $12 billion in capital investments and grants to support MDIs and CDFIs. In June, I joined Vice President Kamala Harris, Senator Mark Warner, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen to announce the release of the initial $1.25 billion in funds provided to CDFIs. Furthermore, as part of the American Jobs Act, we provided $10 billion to renew Treasury's State Small Business Credit Initiative, that is the SSBCI, to allow basically financial institutions, including CDFIs and MDIs, to participate in state, territory, and tribal programs to provide up to $100 billion in new loans and investments in small and minority-owned businesses. These programs and dollars will help our communities recover. But our work is not done. As a result of decades of discriminatory practices like redlining, which resulted in the financial exclusion of people of color, traditional banks can sometimes see Black and Latinx communities a rending risk and refuse to make loans to them. As chairwoman of the Financial Services Committee, I'm looking at this issue closely. Further this year, I held a hearing with the megabank CEOs. I held them accountable by asking them tough questions about their support for vulnerable communities through the pandemic and their commitments to racial equity as their companies see record profits this year. But beyond continuing to keep the pressure on megabanks to do their part, we must also ensure that we continue to provide capital and other support to CDFIs and MDIs that serve communities of color. This includes parts of my comprehensive legislation that promoting and advancing communities of color through Inclusive Lending Act that would strengthen MDIs through partnerships with larger financial institutions, technical assistance, and ensuring opportunities for MDIs to hold government deposits. So thank you again for your work and for all of your efforts during this crisis. I look forward to continue partnering with your organization in the months to come. Thank you very much.